Hi both. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you both doing today?
Very well, thank you.
I'm really well, thank you very much.
Excellent. And obviously this is part of the 25 years of dentistry.co.uk campaign we have coming up, where we're going to be looking back over the last quarter of a century and just, well, talking about everything related to dentistry. So today I thought we could look at Denplan and how Denplan has fared over the last 25 years and your roles within this. So, I mean, if you don't mind, could you maybe just both give me a little overview of how you got into dentistry and your journeys? So maybe, Catherine, if we start with you.
Yes, so I qualified almost 30 years ago in Leeds and did house officer and then senior house officer roles for 2.5 years before going to general dental practice. I moved into a practice. We were looking and talking about it yesterday, weren't we, Lewis? A practice in 1997 that had a small number of Denplan patients in Reading, which is actually coincidentally where one of the founders of Denplan actually worked, not in the practice I worked at, but down the road. And that was my first experience of Denplan. I then moved on to buy into partnership with another dentist in West Berkshire, and I owned that practice for almost 20 years. And I then moved in, not after 20 years, but partway through that journey, I moved to join Denplan about 12 years ago, and have moved through. So been involved with Denplan on two sides, really. I suppose they're very much in practice, owning a practice, being part of our quality program from that side, but also then obviously now having been well ingrained in this side of the company. So yeah, long experience of being part of Denplan.
Absolutely. Is that similar for you, Lewis?
Yeah, very similar journey. I qualified a little bit before Catherine. So yeah, I qualified in 1990. Started in practice in 91. Been in the same practice ever since 1991. I've only worked in one place, and we started going Denplan about 1993, and then just gradually built up and up. And then we were completely private when the new contract, the second new contract came in 2006. So yeah, so I've seen two new contracts in my career, and I've worked for Denplan as head dental officer for the last couple of years, but I've been working on the sort of training side since 2014 alongside Catherine.
Excellent. And you both must enjoy your roles there to still be here in 2022 after such a history with Denplan.
I think I could speak for both of us that we both feel very privileged to be in these roles. I think especially at the moment with the amazing change that is going on within dentistry. But I think the fact that we've been so involved with it from both sides means we can really understand our members, really consider what they want, what they're likely to want. And I think, yeah, as I say, it's a privilege. They're very mixed roles. They are never a dull day. I think I can safely say never a dull day, and lots of variety. So yes, certainly I speak for myself, but I think I speak for Lewis as well. Very, very privileged to be doing what we do.
Yeah, we are like most Denplan dentists, we are very evangelical about it because it's certainly changed our professional careers and helped us move into mixed practice, then fully private practice. So yeah, so just tell us if we get too excited, Gabby.
So far so good, you're all right. I think, Catherine, you said something really significant there, which was that this is a really exciting time for dentistry. I think a lot of people would agree with you with that one. I think there's a lot of change taking place, but not necessarily bad change, and it's massive opportunities out there for private practice too. Do you feel this is the busiest that you two have been since joining Denplan, or you're so I can imagine you've got your work cut out for you at the moment?
Yeah, in some ways I would say the busiest time we had was actually in the first lockdown.
Okay.
And poor Lewis literally had baptism by fire because he joined about 2 weeks into that. So certainly, as I know, some jurisdictions obviously were slightly open, but certainly once that sort of main lockdown of people and environments, and I think I certainly used to working very hard. I have never worked as hard as I did during that period when practices were closed during March and into June, April and into June of 2020. It was a significant time for us. I think obviously people were very concerned, very worried, and absolutely understandably, and our function, as it always is, was to try and support them as best we could, to filter through all of the mishmash of information that was coming out and turn it into something that was actually usable. Having said that, though, now is very busy, but in a nicer way,
Yes.
in a very positive way, whereas that was a different way of supporting. But it is super busy now. You know, that we are used to seeing as a company, obviously, changes and alteration and anticipation of changes in contracts and so on. Yeah. But this absolutely feels like a time we've not ever known before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at my age, I was supposed to be slowing down, but I've actually sped up. 2 podcasts today, a webinar tonight. I did a podcast last night, and
I did warn him before he joined when he was applying for the role, but he wouldn't listen to me. So.
But it does, exactly as you said, Gabby, it does feel like, you know, I keep using the term revolution because I think it really does feel like that. You know, the profession's done an amazing job, as Catherine said, to battle through the pandemic when we literally just didn't even know not just when dentistry was going to open up, but if it was going to ever open up again properly, as we're seeing now. You know, from a professional point of view, we're almost out of beyond the storm if it wasn't for workforce issues. But yeah, and again, echoing exactly what you said, I think it is an exciting time, and I think when history looks back on the UK dental profession, this will be a pivotal moment in history, and because, as we know, we just can't go back to, you know, professional morale before the pandemic was the lowest it's ever been in the UK. And we can't go back to that. And I think the profession's now realising it and literally shouting it from the rooftops. You saw Sean Childwood speaking to MPs just at the start of last week. So it's most definitely high on the agenda. But yeah, we absolutely, no change is definitely not an option. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and obviously we're looking back over 25 years now. So what for you guys what have been some of the key changes during that time? You can maybe more generally within dentistry, but also more specifically within Denplan. Are there some like moments that you're particularly proud of or that particularly stand out to you over that time period?
I think for me, what I would say is the change in relating to the morale issue is the change in people's awareness of mental health and well-being.
Okay.
I think that is something there is all the technological changes and so forth, but I think the actual care and concern around whole teams, not just I'm the dentist and this is about me, but to moving very much into this is a team. Not sport is not the right word, but is a team profession. It's absolutely a team profession, and I'm not sure that it really was so much like that 25 years ago. So it's I think that part of it and the importance of our teams, how we work with them, how we look after them, not just when things are bad, but how do we make sure that people stay positive, stay good, I think is something that has moved significantly, probably accelerated in the last 5 years, but has definitely shifted massively in the last 25 years. And that's really important. That has to be at the heart of then anything that happens, because we can't look after patients well if the teams aren't well. We can't train, we can't develop, we can't do anything if that isn't at the core. So I would say that's one of the big core changes over the last 25 years.
Sounds like a good one though, that. I mean, do you think that the conversation of mental health is come on such a way in comparison to when you first started up? I mean, the young dentists coming through now who've just graduated, do you think they should feel hopeful that perhaps their grievances or the stresses of the profession will be dealt with more sensitively than perhaps when you guys started up?
Oh, definitely. I would like to hope so. I would definitely like to hope so. I think,
Yeah.
but I think there are other issues that are attached to it that we didn't have, that Lewis and I would not have had.
Yeah.
In the sense that there was no social media, there was nothing.
Yeah.
All of those kind of things that do impact morale and well-being, that are potentially ideal cases. There was no Photoshop, there was none of that. It was what you did was what you did, and what you showed people was what you were actually capable of. And I think that therefore that the pressures potentially are very different, but hopefully because there is more openness and culture, we can develop. But we need to move as a profession with that. We can't sit idly by the sidelines and let that happen. We have to be engaged in it to make it work, because otherwise the profession, people will leave. Back to Lewis's point earlier about workforce and so on, people will leave the profession, whether it's team members, whether it's dentists. So it has to be key to making it. Dentistry is a great profession. Lewis and I absolutely, love it. As we say, we're evangelical about the situation we're in at the moment, but we fundamentally love dentistry. We love the people we work with. So actually, how do we keep those really good people in the profession? That's got to be the future as well. Got to be the future, regardless of what technology does, education, everything. Yeah, that has to be at the heart.
Completely echo that as well. I would argue that we are, coming out of the pandemic possibly into probably the most exciting time from an actual sort of clinical dentistry point of view, because it's all sort of coming together, all the sort of the technological advances, all the sort of philosophies. So prevention, minimally invasive dentistry, direct composites, clinical photography, the digital revolution, that's been talked about literally since the history of your journals started for 25 years. But it is finally here. Digital is finally now mainstream in dentistry, and also training as well. There are so many training opportunities now for dentists and practice teams to advance their skills, to develop their careers, to go off in different directions. It really is, I would argue, probably one of the most exciting times, certainly in my practicing career.
Yeah. I think that's nice to hear, though, isn't it? After a couple of years, they've been really, really difficult. And so I think it's crazy when you look back 2 years ago where we were, and that dental practices weren't actually open at that point. We had a few weeks and then it was all open again, but the doors are still closed, and all dental team members were still just sitting at home and waiting for that green light. So I think if you rewind 2 years ago and you think, oh gosh, this is where we are now, it's incredible to think that this is where we're at. And also, I think quite lucky to some extent in that there is this opportunity for practices to really grow and provide that care where they can.
And I think it's go on. And I think the big thing about that as well is it gave people opportunity to stop and think.
Yes.
If you think about it, actually, as professionals, many of us, certainly from a dentist perspective, but for many dental nurses and hygienists, therapists and so on as well, is that, we started this journey at 18 and we kept going, and we very rarely get any breaks from it at all. Even when I think like mat leaves and so on, when certainly my generation, I was working till almost when she dropped, so to speak, and was back at work starting sessions when she was 8 weeks old. So there will be many females of my generation who were exactly the same. So there was none of the longer gaps. There was no time to think and reflect on your career. And I think what that break in things, once people had got past the very practical worry of how do I care for my patients and had got into a more practical rhythm, was that they did have time to actually think about it. What do I actually want from my professional career? And that's actually a really positive thing. And so I think people have come out of it now, as you say, and things are starting to ease, and they're actually thinking, right, what do I want to do? What is important to me? Where's my work-life balance? What do I do to, as Lewis said, to train myself further, to further myself? And that's what's creating this kind of a lot of this drive.
And you made the point about it almost seems like almost a nightmare now, but it was only a short period of time. I was having a conversation the other day with a group of Denplan dentists that obviously when dentistry was still closed, you just couldn't get PPE. It's just so I remember putting in a call to Nigel Rutter, who works at Wrights, and I said, I asked him, I said, have Wrights got any PPE? He said, how much do you want? I said, could we have £2 million worth, please? Because Simply Health, which is the parent company of Denplan, had basically realised that, you know, everyone wanted to get back to work, but this was a major sort of limiting factor. So it was just brilliant to see the whole wider profession come together.
Yes.
And again, just in a few short years, that seems almost sort of a distant memory. And now, PPE is practically growing on trees, being given away free in some areas, in inverted commas. But yeah, I just hope that the memory of this awful time will actually make us come out stronger, and I think it will.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think it's also kind of accelerated or acted as a catalyst for certain changes that were happening anyway, but it's just made it happen a lot quicker than it perhaps would have without it. And I think, Catherine, that conversation about mental health that you brought up earlier, I think that is one of them. I think that's really come to the forefront and actually put dentistry out there on a national scale. I mean, the amount of dental headlines that you see now on national newspapers and things like that, it's terrifying what they're actually saying. But then it's also really great that it's getting that kind of exposure, which I think perhaps it wasn't before the pandemic. So hopefully this has also made some good changes in all areas. And I mean, how has this kind of shaped what Denplan are doing? So looking ahead now, what's next for you guys? Have you got some exciting stuff in the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, because we have so much heritage, it's 36 years of Denplan, and Lewis and I have, plenty of very brilliant people who fulfilled our roles before us, and that we were lucky enough to learn from, be mentored by, and grow. That we are able to use that, almost the previous information of difficult times in the past, and think forwards of what's going to be needed. Plus, we have a great relationship with our members, so we are able to speak to them. We've just come out of first 4 of our national forums, so to be able to see a lot of our big clients, talk to them about what they're wanting, what's important to them. Some of the big themes coming through that we're seeing, and Lou especially working on hugely, is sustainability in dental practice. That again, the factor of all the PPE, all the wastage, people were starting to think about the planet and what's important. But I think the amount of single-use stuff that's had to be binned over the last 2 years has focused people. So that's an area that we're really enthusiastic about, and want to drive forward, using members' existing ideas, but actually expanding that as well. But also looking at the next generation. We have a fantastic group of younger dentists, under 35-year-olds, that we're working with, and that's fascinating for Lewis and I, to understand what they're thinking, what's important to them. As a company, we've got to be in tune with that. We can't stay in the past. We have to move forward. But also to bring them on, to help them to see the wider world of dentistry around, rather than you can be very, very focused on the clinical in practice, and your practice is your world, but actually there's a whole huge amount of dentistry that goes on outside of that, and how do we nurture them and grow them so that they can understand that and see if that's an area that they are interested in for the future. So that's a big part of what we're doing, but also raising the voice of private dentistry. That's been a big part that we started a couple of months actually, before the first pandemic, coincidentally, but actually continuing that, of how do we make sure that the voice of mixed practices and private practices are heard in government, because that there is so much talk of NHS contracts regardless of jurisdiction, and that's really important. That's very, very important work, but that's obviously not our area of expertise
yeah.
whatsoever,
Yeah.
but we do have that area of huge knowledge in regard to mixed and private practice. So that's been a really encouraging piece of work to share the message that private dentistry is not cosmetic dentistry, or it is partly, but it's only cosmetic dentistry, only part of it. And the bulk of private dentistry in this country is general dental practice.
Yeah.
Still seeing 3 generations of families, all of the stuff that is you know, people would expect in an NHS practice, just with a different payment method. And it's really important to get that message across to government of how important these practices are in the oral health of the nation.
Yeah. It's breaking down that stigma, isn't it? I think there is still association with private dentistry as being very elitist, perhaps, but actually it's there to help people with their general health and their oral health, which is linked to general health, which again I think is a conversation that's really come to the forefront in the last couple of years, is the importance of dentistry in maintaining a general overall, you know, your overall well-being, really. And your next generation of dentists, I mean, I went to your roundtable, yes, earlier this year, and that was fantastic. And the conversation that was had there, I mean, I think we all reflected afterwards and said we could have sat there for half a day.
Quite happily for a very long time.
But it was wonderful because they were all so vocal, and I mean, I came away from that, I learned a lot, but they were so well informed, and it's great that such young dentists, people so early on in their career, carry these kinds of opinions and feel they're able to speak up about certain issues. And yeah, I think you've got a good group there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
I've been lucky in that respect to work with young dentists for many years, undergrad training, postgrad training, foundation training courses, which I still do as part of my Denplan role as well. And I think you both made really good points about this, you know, they are young dentists are looking at their different options, and they do need support and sort of education in sort of not just the clinical side, but sort of business, compliance, sort of mentoring. And again, when you go to dental school, you're just taught to be a dentist. You're not taught to be an NHS dentist. You're not taught to be a private dentist. So there isn't that awareness of what private dentistry is. And for me, that's where Denplan is so important, because you know, NHS dentistry is often referred to as a treadmill. But if you are completely private, although it's a different treadmill, probably a nicer treadmill, a treadmill that's moving more slowly, you know, the minute you stop activity, the minute it's at the weekend, the minute you go on holiday, that income stops immediately. The great things about having patients on a plan, first of all, is that, you know, is the patient loyalty. You know, they want to be sort of members of your practice, but also it changes the focus away from activity. You don't have to do something. You don't have to do a filling. You don't have to do a crown. You're actually getting paid to keep patients healthy, and of course this is the exact philosophy that youngsters are learning at dental school. And so then certainly in the Denplan environment, and this is again why we're so evangelical about it, is you are getting paid to keep people healthy, to maximize oral health. And then exactly as you said, Gabby, that's going to have a massive knock-on effect with systemic diseases as well. And if we can bring the dental profession and the medical professions closer together and work together as an integrated unit, then I think this is another reason why, you know, we've got every reason to be excited about the future, and that maybe the pandemic has drawn a line and we won't go back. I really hope that we don't go back below that line.
And me. I think it's just been quite an uplifting conversation, actually, which is really nice. It sounds like you've both had fantastic journeys within dentistry and within Denplan, and I've no doubt that you're going to continue to work your magic and take it far, and keep educating people as well. Like you said, that's really important. I think public education and what private dentistry is and what it can do, and what the importance of dentistry as a whole, NHS or private, just needs to keep being elevated, and hopefully that continues to happen. But I mean, is there anything else you guys would like to add?
I'll just sort of say that looking forward to having this conversation again, probably on some other medium in the next 25 years. Probably be holograms or something
I was
like
about
that.
to say that. It'll be just all three of us kind of there, but not really.
It is an exciting time. The dental profession is amazing. You know, the whole team and all the whole British Dental Industry Association. It's just a fantastic bit of the UK economy. So yeah, let's look forward with hope to the next 25 years and FMC, which will, you know, probably be just beaming your journals into people's consciousness.
That's the plan.
Yeah, and I think the thing I'd add to that is, because we are in this such a stage of awareness of dentistry, is that we need to use it. You know, we need to use it positively.
Yes.
And while many of the stories sadly are negative at the moment, and there are real concerns, but how do we use this springboard to use all the positive stuff that we're talking about, and how do we make sure then that the public understand that we get those bigger oral health messages out, we get the big links out, all of those things that, you know, essentially we're dealing with on the whole two mainly preventable diseases. So how do we take it right back to what were Denplan's original roots around prevention, and trigger that and move that into the public's consciousness, so that we can really improve health outcomes in both oral health and their general health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both very much for joining me today. It's been a really great conversation. A lot of good messages there that can be taken away from people watching, and continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gabby.